Hey, it's Jason, and today I'm reviewing the Samsung Galaxy A01, an entry-level burner phone that you can pick up for as cheap as 50 bucks. It's got a 720p IPS display, a workable low-end processor, Android 10, a fairly nice build, and really, it's a functional Android experience that's the best you're gonna get for the cost of a pair of jeans. I want to start off with a disclaimer and talk about how things are not always as they seem in the tech world. So this phone is as low as 50 bucks, like I said, when you buy it locked onto a specific network. That's what I did. I actually paid 60 bucks for this guy on the TracFone network, but I actually could have paid less since there's other options like Simple Mobile for 50 bucks through Target. But this is not the kind of phone you buy unlocked at face value, which is actually 150 bucks, spectacularly overpriced, especially when I just reviewed an unlocked phone for 100 bucks that's much better in every way. So if what you want is a main phone that you're actually going to pay for service with, head over to my Umidigi A7 Pro review. That's the budget phone I actually recommend as a main. But in the world of burner phones, where you don't pay for service, maybe you're looking for a second phone for work stuff, maybe you want to give your kids a phone, but just to play Angry Birds on, this is the world in which I'm reviewing the A01. Please don't buy this phone unlocked at its overpriced face value, and don't buy carrier subsidized to actually set up the plan it's locked onto. That's always a bad deal. But if you're still here and fit the criteria of just using this phone over Wi-Fi, let's talk about the design first off. The A01's feel in the hand is, to me, similar to that of the Pixel 4a. I know people sometimes don't draw the connections like I do, but look, they're just about the same size, they got a very similar plastic texture, and the thickness and weight is very similar. If you had these both in your backpack and you're just reaching around for them in the dark, I think you'd have trouble telling the difference. When you turn on the A07 though, you're greeted by a pretty nice looking 5.7-inch 720p plus IPS display. I'm not even going to comment on the bezels and chin. If you think it's outdated for 2020 to 2021, I can see that. If you think it's actually pretty good for the price though, I get that as well. Really, regardless of how you see it, it is definitely workable though. Let's talk everyday usage, and as a precursor, I just want to say don't expect a multitude of bells and whistles with this guy. I talked about how I appreciated the included screen protector and case with the A7 Pro. You don't get that here. Don't expect to be able to pay with your phone in stores because there's no NFC, there's no fingerprint reader anywhere on the phone, and unsurprisingly, no fast charging. My particular model does actually surprisingly have USB-C, but I've heard that it actually depends on the network you get it from, so just keep in mind even that may vary as well. Now, performance is where things get interesting, because this is without a doubt the strongest category of this phone. It's got a Snapdragon 439, which is really pretty fast and for sure usable for everyday tasks. It's actually kind of crazy because the performance was fairly comparable to that of the A7 Pro. And while yes, the clock speed is worse on the Galaxy A01, there's half as much RAM, this guy somehow still manages to keep up, albeit with a few hiccups and glitches like you'd expect on any budget phone. I'm not one for benchmarks, but if you want to know more, I'll drop some articles to tests of both these two chipsets on Notebook Check. Keep in mind this doesn't factor in RAM, and if you look at this comparison site that kind of tabulates raw spec values between two phones, it puts the A7 Pro at a performance score of 78 and the A01 at 73. Fairly accurate in that assessment, I'd say. The last thing I want to talk about is the camera. It takes photos, and they aren't half bad for a $50 phone, but I will say this phone isn't going to impress anybody in this department. I've used quite a few budget phones, and I talk a lot about how you can overcome common phone camera weaknesses like blurry photos, bad dynamic range, or noise by holding really still, taking a bunch of photos, and then editing after the fact. That strategy works here, but just less often. Indoor shots are grainy, so good lighting is always a must. Dynamic range is pretty bad across the board, but with the effort, you can often get sharp, colorful photos that do edit fairly well. Here's some examples straight out of the camera. So despite the lack of extra features or anything really pleasantly surprising, This is a solid device to scroll Instagram, watch YouTube, and occasionally snap and edit photos on. I remember one time a couple months ago when I first got this phone, I was trying to post a video on Instagram and I could not do it on my new iPad I just got at the time, and I resorted to this $50 phone over the $500 to $600 iPad just because it worked. So while this ain't a story of me gushing over a budget phone because it feels like a mid-range phone, it is a phone that does phone things for, frankly, a non-phone price. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.